In this podcast, you will meet Tatiana Chamorro, a young, successful Latina who came to this country from Nicaragua as a student, wife, and mother. Tatiana's family thought she was taking on more than she could handle and would not last 2 months in the United States. Facing a plethora of obstacles and setbacks, Tatiana was determined to succeed. For her, failure was not an option. Tatiana completed her undergraduate degree in liberal studies at Texas A&M University Commerce with a GPA of 4.0. Not to be outdone by her husband, who earned his master's, Tatiana continued her education. In 2020, she received a Master of Science degree in marketing while maintaining her 4.0 GPA. In 2021, Tatiana was named Young Entrepreneur of the Year by the American Advertising Federation of Dallas. Today, less than 9 years from her arrival to this country, this entrepreneur is now owner-partner of a Dallas-based digital marketing startup that is already earning 6 figures a year and growing. And this is just the beginning of her story.
Welcome to the Latino Business Report. This podcast covers business, people, and issues of the day from a Latino perspective. The Latino Business Report is brought to you by TAMAC, the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. TAMAC is the leading Hispanic business organization in Texas since 1975. Now for your host, J.R. Gonzalez.
And welcome, folks. My name is J.R. Gonzalez. I'm your host, and this is the Latino Business Report. Today, we have a very special guest, a young lady out of Dallas, Texas, Tatiana Chamorro. Tatiana, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Now, Tatiana, you're in Dallas, but where are you from originally?
I am originally from Nicaragua.
So were you born in Nicaragua?
No, I was born in Costa Rica.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, you got me confused. So did your parents have you long distance or what? I mean, how does that work?
No, we actually had a lot of political unrest. And so my parents left to Costa Rica, and that's when I was born and why I was born there.
Okay. Now that makes a little sense. And you've been in the U.S. for how long?
9 years.
Only 9 years?
Only 9 years.
Wow. So you were raised in Costa Rica?
Nicaragua. I was
Nicaragua. Okay, so you went back. Okay, I got it. Well, one of the things looking over your resume very quickly, and I'm very excited to have you on this podcast, Tatiana, is that you were actually awarded by the Advertising Federation of Dallas the Young Professional of the Year for 2021. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Now, how in the world did a young girl from Nicaragua who's only been in the States for 9 years actually get such a prestigious award? And can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came to the U.S. with my husband almost 9 years ago, and we came because he was going to do his master's. Once he completed his master's, we ended up staying, and I did my master's. And just after I finished my master's, we then decided that I was going to own my agency, and I started to grow through my agency quite quickly. And creating a lot of impact and growth internally in our team members. And that's how I was able to apply to the award.
So both of you came for your education. Were you planning on staying, or did you think you were going to be going back at one point?
That's a great question. We love our country. We love the U.S. as well. We consider this our country as well now. We now feel very Texan. But when we came, we were planning to just come for my husband's master's program.
So you all feel pretty Texan now?
We do, yeah. And that's how my children speak.
Yeah. Well, so you got your master's in what did you get your undergraduate degree in?
I did an undergraduate degree in liberal studies with a concentration in visual communication.
Okay, and then your master's?
My master's in marketing.
In marketing, okay. And so I like the way you put that. I decided to own my own company. So you just decided I'm going to own my own company once you got your master's degree. So how did that come about? And can you tell us a little bit about the company that you're working in now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So that was always something in the back of my mind. And when I say I decided to own my company, I mean, I decided to make that jump there. I think as entrepreneurs or people who are wanting to own their own business, a lot of times we're scared as to when to make that transition. That was the moment I decided I was ready for that transition. Now, previous to that, because I knew I wanted to be a business owner, I had been planning and kind of like setting the soil, right, for when I was ready to make that jump. The reason I started my franchise with Height was they were my partner before, where they were helping me fulfill digital marketing. My partner, JC Height, he lives in Nicaragua. And we have a big percentage of our headquarters there, right? So there was a big impact that we were creating in both the business owners we were servicing here in the U.S. and growing that, and also the impact we were creating in the people that was supporting us.
So Height Digital is based in Nicaragua. I mean, that's where home office is, and you have franchises throughout the United States.
Our headquarters, yes.
Oh, okay. So I would only assume that the majority of your staff is Latino?
Yeah.
And Latinas. I mean, I'm not being gender biased here, but
actually, since you mentioned that, about 60% of our managers at Height are female. So
no wonder you're successful. You get things done. Okay, so you come to the U.S. You've come for your education. You get your master's, and you decide you have that entrepreneurial spirit, which I applaud you and commend you on. And then, I mean, come on. You're a student, you're probably having a difficult time. So you started a company, and why did you pick this particular company or this particular space to get involved in?
Yeah. Well, I had done my master's in marketing, right? So I knew that this was a niche that I already kind of explored. I also have my background in visual communications. So I started to create this offering where I was supporting. I noticed the discrepancy in both fields, whether it was visual communications when we were creating in higher ed here in the US, professionals that are very much aware about graphic design, but maybe not so much about digital marketing strategies. And then when I did my master's in marketing, I realized that we were creating professionals that were all aligned in like strategy, but maybe not so much on the graphic design side. And I think today, having the online presence that businesses need to have, there needs to be a balance between understanding how to attract clients, but also those strategies that are being implemented and making sure that it makes sense to your business model, right? So that's really where my business idea came to be and how I started my own business. I saw a lot of input and impact that we can create to business owners that are wanting to, let's say, grow their own business. How do we get people to know about them in the right way? And then are we actually quantifying the efforts that digital marketing is doing, right?
Okay. So you have this education, you have this background, you looked at the space and said, this is what I want to jump into. So I have to ask, did you have some sort of financial involvement? Did you put some money down? How did you start a franchise? I'm sure there's a lot of people wondering, how did this young woman who just graduated all of a sudden jump in feet first and start owning a business?
Yeah, great question. In digital marketing, so the first thing I did is I started the business with my own brand. So I did that for 6 months. And during those 6 months, we were able to scale to a little bit over 6 figures, right? We were going to be closing the first year at over 6 figures. And so one of the first things that we were doing was saving up everything that we were, generating, reinvesting.
Now let me interrupt. Tatiana, when you say you started your own brand, your own business, what type of business was that?
It was digital
in this space?
marketing.
Digital marketing. Okay. And what was the name of that company?
Hivemark.
Hivemark. Okay. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. Just wanted to clarify. Go ahead.
No, you're good. And so we started, this business, and we were partnering with Height, which back then they were doing white label. So for anyone that doesn't know what label does, is that you are essentially hiring a fulfillment company to fulfill certain aspects in my case, digital marketing, that I didn't have the capacity. So let's say running Facebook ads through them, right? And then I was doing the other services myself and my team. So we were doing that for the first 6 months. That's how we were able to begin scaling. And once we scaled, and I think there are, just to be honest here, I think this is like God just planting things in our way as we're growing and taking these opportunities, because the second that I had enough saved, the franchise opportunity opened, right? So I was actually the first female to own a franchise. And a big part of that was, it was just like perfect timing, right? So we had saved enough to amount for that investment. And I think that that's important, because a lot of times we're scared to invest. Like, at that moment, that was a big risk that I was taking, reinvesting everything we had done in the last 6 months.
That is amazing. I think you picked a very good company to get involved in, at least the area of digital marketing. Doing a little bit of research before this podcast, I realized that in the United States alone, over $140 billion were spent in digital marketing in the U.S., and it's projected to exceed over $200 billion in the next 20 years or so. I mean, that's huge. That is huge. So as more and more advertisers are starting to switch from conventional advertising as newspapers and billboards and television, a lot of them are going to digital marketing, correct?
That's right. And I think the biggest value add there is that a lot of times, and traditionally, right, we look at the newspaper, you advertise in the newspaper. You know your ad is coming out, but you can't really track if that actually increased your sales. You can correlate it if sales were increased during the time your advertising was shown, but you can't really track it. You can't quantify it directly.
You can't track it. You can't tell who's reading it, the age group, just the demographics, and a lot of the analytics are not there in traditional advertising. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
That I recognize. And I do my own digital marketing for myself every now and then, and it is a huge help, but I know I am not good at it. I mean, come on. I still own a MySpace account, so I'm really not tech savvy. As I looked at your website, Tatiana, I noticed that you guys do, you do your logos, you do web design, you do different types of brandings, but I also something called SEO. What's SEO? What is that?
Yep. SEO is search engine optimization. SEO is basically an organic way in which your website can start ranking on Google. So one of the things that I often get asked is, if I design a website, why is my website not showing on Google? And that's because those are two different services. Having a website doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be showing up in the first page of Google. There's work that needs to be done, and that service is called SEO.
Okay. So if somebody were out there listening that's in business and they want to increase their position on Google or try to get more eyes on their website or their product, would this be a method that they can do, is to optimize their SEO?
Yeah, so there's two ways in which you can appear in Google, right? The SEO, right, which is organically, and then through paid ads, which is Google Ads or PPC. The paid ads is something where you'll appear, but then you'll stop appearing once you stop paying for the ads. With SEO, you're really building a long life asset, which is your website. So think about it similar to like real estate. This is like your digital real estate.
Okay. So back when I was younger, everybody had to have a business card. And now you have to have, business cards aren't even that important. You just bump your phones and get the information. But definitely, would you say that a website was pretty much essential, or some sort of landing page for anybody who's in business nowadays?
Absolutely. And I would say that even more so over, for example, having a Facebook page for your business, because at the end of the day, the Facebook page is owned by Facebook, right? So if Facebook stops existing or they change anything in their algorithms or anything like that, all the effort that you have there will disappear, as opposed to a website that you own.
Now, that's a good point, Tatiana, in that I bump into a lot of small businesses that go, well, JR, you know what? We don't have a website, but we have a Facebook page. Here's our Facebook page. And then they get mad at me because I don't see the sales or things that they're doing. I go, what? I don't go to your Facebook every day. I am sorry. I like you. You're a friend of mine, but I have a life. I don't go to your Facebook. So with that, and that's a good point. So that site is actually owned by Facebook. And if they decide one day, or if they kick you off, if something is said on your plate and they kick you off or suspend you, you're just kind of out of luck.
Right.
And with a website, the advantage of having a website, you control that.
You control it. You're building your own digital asset. You're building on your authenticity online. You're building on your perceived value.
Now, good points, Tatiana. Now, there's something that I know that exists out there. Not quite sure how it works, but when you're talking about paying for clicks, can you explain that to me a little bit?
Yeah. So paying for clicks would be more on the PPC approach. One of the things that I love to share with anyone that I meet with, right? It is going to be extremely important that when you're making the decision to go into digital marketing or hire a digital marketing agency, that they do the due diligence, because the way that you get two different types of cost in a digital marketing strategy. The first one is what you pay the digital marketing agency to manage your ads. And the second one is what you're paying the platform where you're advertising, right? The budget for the platform where you advertise is something the digital marketing agency should suggest to you. And that is going to be based on an industry standard, depending on what type of industry you're advertising in, right? So a lot of times marketing agencies will say, if the client tells them, well, I only have $400 that I want to use for my ad budget, they'll say, yeah, we'll make it work and we'll find whatever we can. That's like throwing your money away, because you need to be competitive within the landscape or you're never going to be showing up.
And if we don't know their rate, they may be keeping 350 of that 400 for their services and only spending 50.
Most of the time, that charge needs to happen through your account. So make sure that you're not paying the agency directly for that. Make sure that you're in ownership of the platform, for example, your Google ad account.
Good point. Good point. Now, as we look at this, Tatiana, what advantages do people have in using digital marketing over other conventional means? And is it something that I know you anticipate it's going to be here to stay, and the numbers show that it's increasing, but why is it an advantage to use digital marketing for your service or product?
Yeah, I think apart from the obvious advantage of increasing your sales, right? There's also the advantage of increasing your brand authority. So you're building this brand authority online, which would traditionally be done through like traditional forms of advertising, like a newspaper or anything like that. But now you can actually make sure that those are giving you a return on investment. So one of the beautiful things we personally do is that there's a dashboard that we provide access to all of our clients where you can see each person that is coming from different avenues. So if it's coming from Google Ads, we'll be able to see, we have their information, so we can actually track it. And then it becomes a conversation of, hey, John came from this ad. Did he get a quote? And so the client will tell us, yeah, we quoted him for $3,000 for a roofing project or, whatever it is. So we'll be able to track that. And then if it becomes a sale, now it's partly tied to the sales and the ROI of the company, right? Mm-hmm. So now digital marketing becomes a conversation around opportunities for the growth in the business.
Got it. And it seems like more and more people are using social media platforms, and ads are out there everywhere. What I don't get is I think my computer is actually spying on me or something, because I'll go to an ad. Let's say I go to an ad. I saw this really cool knife the other day that they're selling online. So I click on and look around. I'm not interested. Boom. But then everywhere I go, I see that same knife ad keeps popping up and popping up and popping up. How does that work? How do they do that?
Yeah. So one of the most important aspects of digital marketing is ensuring that you have enabled the tracking capabilities that you need in order to do that, right? So what that does is that since you went into the website, we are now tracking users that are coming into the website that already saw certain ads, right? That's one of the most successful forms of advertising because you already showed interest in a product. What's more important than that, because when you hire a marketing agency, they're the ones implementing those strategies. As a business owner, what's important is for you to be aware and make sure that your marketing agency is on top of those items, right? So just making sure that the tracking is enabled the way it should be enabled.
So tracking is definitely an advantage. So it kind of gets who's looking and then just reminds that person constantly. Okay. Now then, how about if there's an app for this, I think it'd be great. Once I buy a product, I went online and I bought some product over the holidays, but I still get the ads. I go, I already bought it. I don't need it again. But there again, it's that mechanism that just says, this is a potential buyer. So we're just going to keep sending them stuff does it ever stop?
It should if you're working with the right team.
Good point. Tatiana, tell me a little bit about your business there. I mean, how many employees do you have over there up in Dallas right now?
Up in Dallas, we are right now diversifying, and we are about to open our headquarters of Height in Dallas. In total, overall, we have about 160 employees at Height. I also co-founded the Height Creative branch with my partner, and in there we have 20 employees that are overseeing all of the design aspects.
I see. Now that's what I think is shrewd about you, and I'm glad you kind of took that. It was trying to transition to that. So Height Digital, you are an owner of Height Digital franchise, but you also own your own, which is you're a co-owner of Height Creative. And so you're actually like a vendor to Height Digital?
Well, so it began more of me having my background in design. I came to my partner, JC, and I said, JC, let me show you what I've been working on in my business and how I have been able to scale. And the bigger aspect is that we're seeing a lot of marketing campaigns that were starting in, SEO or Google Ads for people that didn't have websites, or when they had the website was terrible. And so the thing with that is that the place where customers go to make the decision, the final decision, is your website. And so what I was doing was implementing branding strategies to make sure that there was a consistency, there was a look and aesthetic that was really complementary and consistent with the business that was marketing, right? And so by creating those packages, we were able to also grow the business and create that stability. And so I brought in the idea of let's offer these services for all of our franchises. Now, back then we were only 3. We are 22 locations now. So since then it's transitioned a little because we started working only 3 people in our Height Creative department. That was about 7 months ago. We now have 20.
Wow. That kind of growth in 7 months?
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Insane. Okay.
We were handling about 40 web projects. We now are about 120 a month.
Do you get any sleep?
I do.
Okay. So the digital arena is alive and well, and it's going to be prosperous for a lot of people who get into it. Now, Tatiana, I've got to ask you, you got your master's, you went straight into business per se. How old were you when you started your first business, if you don't mind? I'm not going to ask you how old you are now. How old were you when you first started your business?
I was 26.
26. Jovencita. Okay, young lady getting involved. How did it feel? I mean, were you nervous? Were you scared? Were you unsure?
I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad is an entrepreneur. My grandfather is an entrepreneur. Almost all my uncles are entrepreneurs. I've been involved in, I've been speaking at boards since maybe I'm like 18, 17. So it was just something where I've been kind of nurturing myself to feel comfortable with. So I've never felt like I go into a room and I don't feel like I belong. And if I do, I make a place for me, right? I think it's part of the process. So obviously owning your own business is scary. It's been very, stressful at times. One of the things that has been the biggest kind of like culture shock has been that I come from families that are entrepreneurs, but I didn't really know what that meant. I had no idea what that really meant, on the day-to-day, on the feeling of managing a lot of employees. I do now, and I definitely didn't think it was going to be what it was, but I also love it. So I kind of felt like I found what I love doing.
So you were naive when you started. It was a lot more than you expected, but then once you learned it, you go, okay, I can handle this.
Yeah, and I think the part of being so naive about it was that since I saw it happening, right, I was like, oh, I've seen that. I can do it.
You can do it. I like what you said. If you felt like you didn't belong, you just kind of created your own space to make sure you belonged.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a different way of doing it. Tatiana, what advice would you give to some young person? Now, well, they don't have to be young, to anybody out there who would like to venture off and start their own business? So
one of the things that I like to do is plan, right? And I do have this saying that you plan and God laughs, and I believe that. But
yes, he does.
Yeah, but I plan to keep myself sane, because I know that I'm accomplishing certain things. So when you plan, you need to make yourself also be flexible for when that change needs to happen. Being an entrepreneur and a creative person, I have all of these business ideas happening constantly. So my biggest advice would be to focus on one and go 100% in one. And what I mean with that is, before I started this business, I also had a startup that I was pitching when I was doing my master's. We were doing an app, and I was pitching in front of really big investors, and one of them being the founder of Teladoc. And it was interesting. It was a super interesting journey. but I realized that it wasn't what I needed to focus on. And so I decided to pivot. And I do not like not giving my 100%. So for me, making that decision was really hard. And so just make sure that you sit down and you plan and you give yourself goals that if you don't reach, you know when you need to pivot.
Okay. Now, not to contradict you, but I also done a little research on you. So you have Height Digital, you have Height Creative, and then you and your husband have a side hustle where you sell real estate. So if you're doing all this, how can you focus in 100% on one?
I love that you mentioned that. I think that they're all tied together, right? So Height Creative and Height Digital are the same services and products within the same fulfillment company. I'm not creating two different companies that fulfill different services, right? I am working internally to grow our company, Height Corporate, right? So they complement one another. They are tied to each other. So in that sense, when I meet with my team at Height Creative, these are team members that are in the same offices as Height Digital, right? In the real estate side, my husband's the one that does that more on the, when he's on his days off. That's really his passion. What I have done in the real estate has been more of public speaking to bring awareness on strategies in digital marketing that can help you receive better leads, for example, for buyers or sellers.
Okay. I thought you were going to tell me that you're in real estate because that's going to be future locations of Height franchises around the country. But okay, so it all ties in together.
Yep.
And your husband has to do something when you're not home.
Well, he works for Amazon.
Okay. Well, this has been very interesting, and congratulations not only on your business success, but kudos. One so young, new to the country, definitely living the American dream. What I'm going to do on this podcast notes, Tatiana, I'm going to list your company, your website, some information, how people can reach out to you and get a hold of you. But do you have any advice out there, not for people wanting to get in business, but people that are in business already, as far as digital marketing and advertising? Do you strongly suggest it? I mean, I'm sure you're biased and would, but what do they need to watch out for? And what should they look for in the future when making that decision to get more involved in digital marketing?
Yeah, I would say that my biggest advice would be to make sure that when you're working with the digital agency, that they're focusing on the leads that they're bringing and the quality of leads. The conversation, first of all, they should be meeting with you at a minimum once a month, at a minimum. The conversation around those calls should be if your sales are increasing, if the customers that they're bringing you are actually buying your product. Traditionally, because it wasn't something that we could track, marketing agencies would focus on engagement. Hey, 300,000 people saw your ad. How does that relate to sales? That's the real question. That's where the conversation should be.
Okay. Good advice. Well, folks, we've had Tatiana here, the Advertising Federation of Dallas Young Professional of the Year for 2021, a owner partner in Height Digital, a co-founder and owner of Height Creative, and also in real estate, and helps her husband stay out of trouble and make sure he runs the real estate company right. And are you a mom as well?
I am. Yeah, we have 2 children.
Oh my gosh, man. Do you ever get it? Well, you say you sleep. But hey, congratulations on your success. Congratulations and keep going. And I'm very, very confident that you will succeed, not only looking at your background, but having this opportunity to talk to you on this podcast. I hear your enthusiasm. You have a passion for what you do, and I have no doubt that you'll be successful and definitely an example of the American dream. Tatiana, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Folks, you've been listening to the Latino Business Report. My name is J.R. Gonzalez. If you like what you hear, give us a like, follow us. You can also go to our website, which I may be handing over to Tatiana to get some more views on it, and that's going to be latinobusinessreport.com. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.